Hi everybody, it's Dr. Andrew Markey here, consultant dermatologist and skin scientist, and today I'm going to cover a crucially important topic, which is the importance of water and the role that the skin plays in maintaining our water balance. This is a crucially important role that the skin plays, and it's full of interesting facts you're not going to have heard of before. So listen down, hope you enjoy it. Water's absolutely critical. Why is water so important? You know, when scientists are looking for life on different planets around the universe, they are always actually looking for water, because water is a master molecule for life. Why is water so important? It's so important because it's a solvent, which means it can dissolve complex molecules and move those molecules around. Humans are really reservoirs of water on legs, with our arteries and veins transmitting all the life-giving chemicals around our bodies. Interestingly, women are 55% composition water and men are 60% composition water, which means that women are made of more substance and less water than men, as if anybody needed to know that women were more substantial than males. So water's essential to life, and water's also essential to brain function, which is critical for us as humans, as indeed it is with all other animals. Our brain has really only got two main demands outside of basic nutrition from glucose. One of those demands is to keep its operating temperature within a sufficiently narrow range, and the other one is it needs to be suspended in its own specialized reservoir of water called cerebrospinal fluid. And when the brain needs to have its water content carefully controlled, it turns to one particular organ, and that is the skin. The skin main function for the brain outside of temperature control is keeping the water content of the body consistent. How does the skin deliver this critical life-saving survival skill? It does this through a barrier function, and in the very surface layer of our skin, the epidermis, at the very top is a layer that dermatologists call the stratum corneum. And in the stratum corneum, that's where the barrier of the skin sits. It's made up of dead skin cells that have passed through the living layers of the skin, dying, the keratin content, the protein content, being submerged within a mortar, if you like, of different fats such as cholesterol and squalene and fatty acids. And this top layer forms the barrier function of the skin. And this controls the passage of water out from our bodies into the environment. If that barrier is defective or doesn't function properly, we lose control of our body water supplies, and we can quickly lose consciousness and die. Indeed, you can see this in the context of intensive care units, where sometimes patients are very ill and their barrier function of the skin has been lost due to severe infections or drug reactions, for instance, and it's potentially a threat to their lives, which is why fluid needs to be given in high volumes intravenously to keep people alive. So one of the main barrier functions of the skin is to keep water in. But of course, every day we're encountering water, be it lying in the bath, going for a shower, out for a walk and getting caught in a heavy downpour. Now that water outside of us, if that were to come in unopposed, we'd literally drown in our own skins, literally. So the skin is a selective barrier for water, and it won't allow the penetration of water, unwanted water, or indeed chemical ingredients that might be suspended in that, toxins and chemicals. it will selectively stop that water from entering into the skin. So we've got a clever two-way water balance, all being controlled by the very superficial part of the skin. And that's one of the miracle barrier functions of the skin. It's, if you like, acting like a cagoule, keeping unwanted water out, and it also acts, if you like, as cling film at the same time, keeping essential wanted water in. So this barrier function on the very surface of the epidermis, the top layer of the skin, is absolutely critical to human survival. If you look at different skins across the globe, different skin types, dermatologists often talk about 6 different skin types. There are indeed many different skin types. In fact, in Brazil, they asked the population back in the 70s to describe their skin types, and in Brazil the government recognises 136 different skin types, but that's Brazil, always do things in a very exotic way. But if you look across the common skin types that we might see on the globe, there are differences in this superficial stratum corneum layer. So for instance, in what you might describe skin of colour, let's say of an African type of skin of colour, that barrier function is particularly strong and thickened. And we think probably because environmentally, although we all came from a narrow part of Africa, a small piece of land, in those high temperature, low humidity areas, it's critical to not lose excess water. So for that reason, in that particular skin type, the skin barrier in the stratum corneum is very, very effective. The transmission of water from skin to environment, what we call transepidermal water loss, is very low. Whereas in more northern European, Caucasian, what we might call type 1 white Celtic skin, it's very easy for water to pass through the stratum corneum if our skin gets irritated, which it particularly does in that skin type in low humidity conditions, low temperatures, such as you find in winter months, which is why so-called white Celtic skin tends to suffer very commonly with what we call winter itch. And that's because the transepidermal water loss is greater in winter and it presents with itching. Interestingly, in intermediate skin types, let's talk about East Asian skin types, for instance, their skin type does transmit more water than the skin of colour African type, and their skin can be irritated by loss of humidity content, which is why often a lot of the skincare programs in the Asian parts of the world have many multi-step processes. Their skincare regime often has got lots of hydration steps because spontaneously their skin often loses hydration levels. So there are differences in this critical barrier function, the transepidermal water loss, but common to all is the ability of the skin to be able to keep water wanted in, unwanted water out. All the time this barrier happens in the context of allowing our miracle skin to be able to grow, stretch and move.